Welcome to the Big O Show on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe.
Still the same damn kid from Oklahoma, same old dreams hanging off my shoulders, wishing and waiting on a shooting star for all to see.
And now your host, straight out of Oklahoma, former Buffalo Bill, Jerry Ostroski.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma.
Welcome everybody. What is going on? It is Thursday night here on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. We are powered by Believe. It is 8 Eastern, 7 Central, and that can mean only one thing, folks. It is time for the Big O Show as we break down this, I don't know how else to say it, colossal matchup in Orchard Park between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. Divisional playoffs this weekend in Orchard Park. That game 6:30 p.m. Eastern, Sunday night in Highmark Stadium. The Ravens come in a 1-point favorite. Over-under is 51.5 points. And I think if you have seen a lot of the national and actually local analysis of this football game, take the over, folks. There's a lot of people that think there's going to be a lot of points scored. I think I'm kind of one of those guys. I think we could possibly see a game in the 30s by each team. It should be tight. It should be awesome. The Baltimore Ravens come in at 13-5. Buffalo, of course, 14-4, as they once again have a divisional playoff game at home. And when we look at this matchup, as we like to always do before we get to Dr. Brad Bowen, he hopefully will hop in here in a little bit to talk about the injury report. This game, a rematch of a game earlier this season. Ravens won that game 35-10. Sunday Night Football in Baltimore. Derrick Henry went absolutely crazy that game, 199 yards. He had a TD, averaged 8.3 yards per carry. Just a colossal game by Derrick Henry. And just another little quick stat about Baltimore. And hopefully we can either keep him under this mark or we can be the in one team. But right now, Baltimore is 11-0 in games where Derrick Henry goes for 90-plus yards rushing. Big task for this Bills team, this Bills defense. We'll talk about it here on the Big O Show today and see if, I believe they're up for the task to where we can get through this game and get on finally to the conference championship game, whether that game be in Kansas City or Houston, because that is another game that I don't think is quite cut and dry. But these two teams coming into this game, Baltimore 6-2 at home, Buffalo 8-0 at home, 9-0 if you count the playoffs. Baltimore obviously 7-2 at home if you count the playoffs. Away record, Baltimore 6-3, Bills 5-4. Look at the rankings within the NFL. Points scored per game, Baltimore comes in at third, 30.5 points per game. Buffalo second, 30.9 points per game. Points allowed, defense. Baltimore gives up 21.2 points per game. That's ninth in the league. Buffalo giving up 21.6. That's 11th. So as far as points scored, points allowed, these teams are very, very similar. And then you look at the takeaway differential. And again, Buffalo living and dying by the takeaway differential. Buffalo comes in plus 24, first in the NFL. And Baltimore is 10th with plus 6. Passing yards per game, Baltimore comes in 237 passing yards a game. That's 7th. Bills 227. That's 9th. Rushing yards per game, Baltimore comes in first in the league. Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, that Baltimore offense, 187 rushing yards a game. Buffalo comes in very good in 9th, top 10, 131 yards a game. Defense, though, this is where you'll see some pretty crazy numbers. The Bills come in 226 passing yards allowed a game. That's 24th in the league. Baltimore comes in giving up 244 passing yards a game, 31st in the league. If you look at this defense like we will in our 5 keys to this game, that defensive secondary and pass coverage has some issues. Look at defensive rushing yards per game given up. Bills come in 12th at 115 yards a game. Baltimore, number 1 in the league. We played number 3 last week in the Broncos. They gave up 96 yards a game. Baltimore comes in giving up a measly 80 yards a game. So there's the tail of the tape, folks, as we like to talk about here on the Big O Show on Thursday nights. The other thing we like to talk about, and we like to talk about that with our man, Dr. Brad Bowen from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance, that's that Bills injury report. Man, Brad, you got to let the listeners in a little bit before we get into this thing. You had a chance to go to your first – was that your first playoff game last week?
Yeah, I think it might have been the first playoff game. Yeah. Actually, no, I take that back. I was at the Chiefs game that was devastating. I think I blocked that out of my memory, but yeah. Other than that was the second one.
Did you have any fun?
Oh, I had an absolute blast. It was a game like that is fun to watch, especially it got a little quiet in there after 7-0, and then the tides turned pretty quick. So that was a good time after that.
Outstanding. We look at this Bills injury report. I guess the first guy we'll talk about is Ray Davis. He had a concussion. We saw that hit last week. Obviously, you saw it live. Pretty devastating blow to the head. Targeting was called on that play. But it seems that he is in stage 4 of concussion protocol. That's a lot of crazy consonants there. But when you look at him at practice today, did a lot of stuff, was wearing the Guardian helmet. Stage 4 at this point in the week, are you pretty optimistic we'll see him on Sunday night?
I'm a pretty optimistic fellow in general, Jerry, so I am hopeful that we're going to see him out there. Stage 5 is basically full practice. He can do everything football related, and he's being looked at by the independent neurologist, same one that would pull him out of the game. So he's knocking on the door of being able to play on Sunday. The hope is that when he's out there moving around, he's not getting any symptoms, right? Because that's the stuff that would hold him out. So if he's not getting headaches, things of that nature, the independent neurologist looks at him prior to Sunday's game, gives him the thumbs up. He'll be out there dressed, ready to go. Potentially wearing the Guardian cap still, but he'll be ready to go.
A lot of studies pro and con against the Guardian cap, but I was going to ask you that question. You answered it for me. You know, these athletes go in and you do a baseline computer test before the season to kind of give the examiners or the team docs a baseline of where you are cognitively. If you have a concussion, then you come back in, you do the test. If the percentages are off enough as far as your reaction times to the test, then they put you in protocol. Does one trump the other? You talk about, like when we played, it was symptoms. You got a headache. Does light bother you? Are you dizzy? Does one trump the other? If you pass the protocol but maybe have some of that stuff, they still hold you out? Do they work together? How does that whole thing go?
I think it all goes together these days. I think the NFL is being pretty cautious with that stuff. I've always had some interesting conversation with the guys that have gone through this computer testing in preseason. People that think that it works really well, some people that think that they don't score all that highly to begin with, and they might tell you that they do that on purpose. Who knows as far as the testing goes, but I do think that if a player is having any symptoms whatsoever, they're not going to let him on the field. That's without a doubt. The computer testing, I would love to know more about what change from preseason to now would actually hold them out or hold them accountable as far as still having symptoms as far as cognitively.
Right.
That I can't say for sure, though.
I was pretty sure when we played, we had all the cheat codes, so everybody knew the same numbers that were usually asked every time, and you kind of kept those in the back of your head. And if you ever couldn't answer those numbers, then you probably really were messed up. But concussion is nothing to laugh at, but it is such a broad diagnosis almost, would you not say?
Yeah, it's certainly nothing to laugh about, but it is a broad diagnosis. People respond very differently, and you're talking about professional athletes that want to be on the field, don't want to lose their spot, and they want to be playing. So there's a lot of times motivation for the athlete to potentially get out there sooner than they need to. That's what the neurologist is supposed to show up and hold them back if need be.
Let's talk about Alec Anderson real quick. I had gone into this week thinking it was an ankle injury. They're actually listing it as a calf injury. Did you get a chance to see any of that? I mean, did you kind of have a feel for it and maybe if he might be a go or not on Sunday?
I didn't see any film of him moving around. With the position that he plays being that blocking tight end, you need your calf to be strong. You're driving off that leg. I'd love to know exactly which one and where in the calf it is, and which side they like to play him on the ball more so. That might be something that they can play with come game day. If his drive leg's his right leg and the left leg's injured, they might play him on the right side of the ball just to have that plant leg back behind him. I do feel positive he's going to play. I guess they had him in a sleeve for practice. He was still listed as limited, so he wasn't going through everything out there. But if he's limited, has a sleeve on, and he's moving around pretty good, I think in the playoffs it's time to strap him up if he can.
Good call. Anybody else you want to touch on real quick as we go into this week? Once again, we've got a very, very small list. Very, very few players have missed practice this week, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, short list. Love to see that, especially in the playoffs. Notable one is Codrington. He's been listed as full. Said that he could have gone back last week, but that was kind of like a staff call as far as keeping him out and making sure that he got back to 100%. But I'll be looking forward to watching him return some kicks and punts here again soon.
Exactly. The more we can keep Shakir safe, the better for the Buffalo Bills.
Absolutely.
He is Dr. Brad Bowen from Driven Physical Therapy and Performance. Man, he's booked up like crazy already at the new year. Practice is booming, but hey, there's a reason why, and that's because he gives unbelievable care to his patients, and they keep coming back and word of mouth, and people go to see him for things like injuries, but also for performance-enhancing type things as far as doing exercises to help your back with golf, help the weekend warrior, and all those different things. Dr. Bowen, real quick, let our listeners in on how they can get a hold of you if they want to come out and see you, if whether it's for injury or for performance-related issues.
Absolutely. Phone number is 716-341-9694. And you can find my website, drivenptperformance.com. Give me a shout either to the website or on that phone number, and we'll get you moving better. I hope I see you for a few more weeks here, Jerry.
Exactly. I hope I see you definitely for a few more weeks. He's Dr. Brad Bowen. We appreciate him as always. Brad, thank you so much for jumping in. I know your day's real busy.
Thank you, Jerry. Go Bills.
All right, go Bills. He's Dr. Brad Bowen, Driven Physical Therapy and Performance, and top-notch guy, man. Top-notch guy. We love him here on the Big O Show. We love him on the Overreaction Sports Network. Does a wonderful job with us breaking down injuries and those types of things. And as we talked about in that segment, we're in a real good spot as far as injuries go with the Buffalo Bills. Let's talk a little bit about this game, just to throw around some different statistics that maybe we haven't heard or we have heard. We like to do in this segment before we get into our 5 keys of the game. Bills have won 11 of their last 13 meaningful games. So we're throwing that Patriots game out where we played all the backups. Won 11 of their last 13. You look at Josh Allen, he's had 100-plus quarterback rating games, 5 of his last 6. And Buffalo has held opponents to under 24 points in 4 straight games. Looking at that Baltimore team, Lamar Jackson, 60-plus yards rushing in 5 straight games. And we talk about Baltimore coming in 5 straight games of 28-plus points scored. And last week, Derrick Henry had 26 attempts for 186 yards, 7.2 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. So obviously, big-time opponents facing off in Orchard Park this weekend. We're going to get into the 5 keys now and kind of break it down a little bit for you, just what we like to do every week here on the Big O Show. And by the way, if you haven't hit the like button, haven't hit the subscribe button, please do so. It helps us out. Our numbers are climbing fast, and that's because of you, the listener and the viewer, and we appreciate it so much. Thank you very, very much. So as we move in these 5 keys of the game, I thought about putting this into our 5 keys of the game. I decided to make it not 5 keys, but kind of talk about this concept. And one of the things that was special to us in the 4 Super Bowl year run and all those teams back then before the 17-year drought and everything, and it's still held true through the 17-year drought, and it does so today. And you can see a big, kind of a validation of what this thing is across the street with the new stadium. That is home field advantage. And just to give you a little background, we're going to use something that the Buffalo Bills put up today. So courtesy of the Buffalo Bills, credit to them for this, but real quick, the Bills put this up today on social media. That is Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park. And the point I'm trying to make is this, folks. This Buffalo Bills team has worked its ass off all season long to get home field advantage for almost all of the playoffs. Obviously, they didn't get it for the final game next week. If they might, if Houston upsets Kansas City. But most people are aiming to the point where they will play the Chiefs next week in Kansas City at Arrowhead. I myself being one of those, as I've hopefully have secured tickets for that game if the Chiefs win, and then the Bills will win this weekend as well. But this team has thrived in Orchard Park in December, in January. We need to embrace that. We need the Mafia this week. We need that place to be loud. We need it to be cold. We need it to be windy. We need snow in the seats. That sets the tone for this game. That video sets the tone for this whole week. Baltimore is a tough physical football team. We are a tough physical football team. And you got two juggernauts going at one another. What is the difference? You look at two quarterbacks where there has been a national fist fight over who should be the MVP. You talk about all the things with these two teams, the things that are similar, the things that aren't, all that stuff. We are at home this week, and we need to set that tone of playing in Orchard Park in January. And I just saw that video today. I was like, it's so fitting. It's so in line with some of the things I want to talk about this on the Big O Show this week. We've got to get that home field. We earned it. Now let's take advantage of it. And damn it, let's go back to the old days and that sense of when we're playing at home late in the year in the winter months, we're not going to get beat. So real quick, my keys to the game. Let's move to that. And we'd like to, again, we talked about hitting the like button, subscribe button. Thanks to all our listeners, all our viewers in the comments section. We thank you as always. But as we move into the 5 keys of the game, my first key of the game is this. And it's something that's been talked about a lot this week leading into this game because of what happened in the first game when Buffalo played Baltimore in Baltimore. Our defense struggled stopping the run. Not only Derrick Henry, they struggled stopping Lamar Jackson as well. And when you look at this and you look at this matchup, we are a 4-2-5 football team. Everybody knows what that is. That is a nickel, base nickel defense. 2 linebackers, an extra hybrid DB, which is Taron Jackson, and then, 4 defensive linemen. Very rarely do we rush more than 4. We don't blitz a ton. We play deep cover 2 coverage, keep everything in front of us, bend, don't break. And obviously that last time we played them, we broke right off the bat when Derrick Henry ripped that long touchdown run off right off the bat in the game. Now, a lot of that has to do with matchups. A lot of that has to do with, as a defensive coaching staff, helping our defensive players against the opponent they're playing, which is, are we in a formation, are we in a set that best fits what that offense is doing? The 4-2-5 is there for a reason, because the longest time, and it still could be the case next week, we are built to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Why we've had issues in the playoffs is beyond me. Most of that is it's really hard to beat teams twice in the NFL, which this week it's going to be really hard for the Baltimore Ravens to beat the Bills twice this season, because there's so much film study. There's so much, there's not much more you can do as a team than what you did that first game. So everybody is aware of each other. But when you look at this Bills team, my first key to the game is help the defense against bigger sets. Will we see a 4-3 formation? Going into that first game, Bernard, Milano, and Johnson were all out. 3 guys that's been talked about all week long. Well, it's different. We got those 3 guys in. Well, one of the things that Bernard and Milano give us the opportunity to do is bring Dorian Williams off the bench, who still to this day, I believe, is our leading tackler on this football team, and I don't quite understand why he's not getting more snaps, although a lot of that has to do with Milano getting him played back into game speed, game shape, because I think you saw that last week with Matt Milano's speed in that game. He finally looks like the Matt Milano of old, running stuff down an open field. But our 3 linebackers, the last time we played Baltimore, and we got into the 4-3, into that 4-3 front 28% of the time against the Ravens. And when you look at our linebacker crew that game, it was Spector, it was Williams, and it was Morrow. Those three guys. Williams, Bernard, and Milano looks a lot different than Spector, Williams, and Morrow. So you have to look at that advantage. We got all of our linebackers back. So this is a team in the Bills that in 2024, props to Joe Marino for steering me in the right direction with these statistics. Good friend of the show, good friend in general. But in 2023, this Bills defense only ran the 4-3 formation 3% of the time. They were in a base 4-3 3% of the time. In 2024, we've been in a base 4-3 3.5% of the time. Not very much. So do we put our team at risk by playing a front that we don't see very much, that we don't play very much? You can still do all the same things coverage-wise. You can play cover 2. You can play cover 3. You can play quarters. You can play man. You can do all those things that you do in that 4-2-5. But now, in passing-like situations, instead of a hybrid like Taron Johnson covering somebody, you're going to have a linebacker. But what I will say is this. If we do choose to run more 4-3 than we have in the past, and you look at this team, we're talking about the number one rushing team in football. We're talking about a guy a team that runs for 187 yards a game. I mean, this is a physical downhill football team. The things that I was worried about the first time we played them. The thing is now is all three of these linebackers do something specifically well. You bring Dorian Williams off the bench and play a base 4-3. Williams is kind of your see ball, get ball guy, your run stopper. You don't give him much responsibility in the pass except for maybe curl flat, because he is a tackling machine. He's going to get to the ball. He's going to get guys on the ground. You got Bernard in the middle who's orchestrating the whole thing, lining the defense up. He also makes the front correct. And when I say that, a lot of times defensive linemen will see something. If they're supposed to play B gap, an offensive lineman might overrun them. They'll hop A gap and then retrace back down the line of scrimmage to make a play. Well, if they hop A, that means they're not in B. Bernard sees that and goes through B. He then plays B. So he makes that front correct. So that's his thing. Big time plays behind the line of scrimmage, directing the defense and making that defensive front right all the time. Then you got Milano. And we'll talk about him a little later in my keys of the game, because I think he's a key piece to trying to keep a certain player for the Ravens contained. But you talk about Matt Milano, and you talk about a guy that was a safety that moved down the linebacker, has tremendous athletic ability, tremendous speed, and can cover tight ends and slots and things like that when he needs to. So that gives you an advantage now with our linebackers that are healthy. We can play that 4-3 base formation a little easier because of the players we have at linebacker. Also, too, being in a base 4-3 can let you blitz more, bring 5-man pressures in a more traditional manner than some sim stuff and things like that. And you still sim out of a 4-3 formation, but you can do some things blitz-wise, and I think maybe that be Bernard, that be Williams. But you can do some things blitz-wise out of a 4-3. So my first key to the game is we need to help this defense against the bigger offensive sets of Baltimore. How do they do that? Well, you could do it with a 4-3 formation. You'd have to pull Taron Johnson out for a few plays, but if the situation dictates that, then that's what you do. So that's my first key to the game. My second key to the game, and as much as we talk about this defense, and as much as we talked about this malign defense against Baltimore in the first game and recently, and honestly, if you look at the stats and how they fit amongst the NFL, they're not that skewed. They're not that bad. But we'd like to pound this defense about they can't stop the run. They can't get off the field on third down. They can't do this. They can't do that. Well, if you looked at that Baltimore game earlier in the year, my second key to the game is Josh Allen and the offense, but Josh Allen has to play better football. The offense did not play well that game. Josh Allen was 16 of 29 for 180 yards passing. He had 5 rushes for 21 yards, and he had a fumble on the trick play. Buffalo had a total of 276 yards in the first game against Baltimore. This is one of those games, and I think Josh is poised to have one of those freak-out games where he, I hate to use the term Superman, but he has that moniker. He has got to play better. The offense has got to play better, and they have got to score points. Because you saw some things, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was Keyshawn Johnson, Or no, it was Ed Oliver, actually. Ed Oliver made a point where they were talking about Lamar Jackson kind of being like Kobe Bryant, where Kobe Bryant is going to get his. You just try to limit what he gets. And I believe that. Henry's probably going to have a couple good runs. Lamar probably will too. They will get theirs. But that offense then has to respond. So when you looked at this last game they played, while the defense was talked about at a large rate, and a lot of that was talked about and how they just weren't put in good situations formation-wise with personnel, but then also that had to do with injury. Josh Allen and this offense has got to find a way to score points and make plays, because if you remember from the first part of this whole thing when we talked about rankings in the NFL, if there is a weakness with this Baltimore defense, their secondary and their coverage. That secondary gets downhill and plays the run incredibly well. You don't hold teams to 80 yards a game if your secondary is not willing to come up and tackle. Hamilton, the Notre Dame grads, as good as anybody at safety, and a long line of hard-hitting safeties that played for Baltimore like Ed Reed. But this secondary of Baltimore is gettable in the passing game. Wide receivers, Josh Allen, tight ends, whatever it may be, they have got to play better. That's my second key to the game. Josh Allen, the offense has to play better. Third key to the game, third down conversions on offense and defense. If you look at Baltimore's offense, they convert on 48.2% of third downs. That's third in the NFL. Their defense holds teams to a 39.8% conversion rate. That's only 18th in the NFL. Not amazing. Kind of goes hand in hand with the way those DBs play. And then you look at the Bills. Their offense converts at a 44.1% clip. That's seventh in the NFL. Really good. Bills defense, though, they give up 43.8% of the time on third down conversions. That's 29th in the NFL. The defense has to find a way to get off the field 2 to 3 times a half or a quarter or whatever it may be. 2 to 3 extra possessions for Josh Allen and that offense to go out and perform. Again, we talked about it. Are you going to stop all of them? No, you're not. You're not going to stop all of them, especially against a team like Baltimore that converts at the rate they do and being third in the NFL. But you got to get off the field 2 to 3 times a half where you normally might not have gotten off the field and get your offense more possessions, get their offense off the field. So my third key to the game is third down conversions on offense and defense. Fourth key to the game, and I think this is big, and I think it's something that people have kind of overlooked because they've talked a lot about it, and you saw it in the comments. Everybody talks about Flowers, with him being out. Some say he's questionable. Is he out? Is he in? I don't really care what Zay does, because to me, the guy that is the key to this Baltimore third down conversion, and Zay does catch a bunch of them, but I think Lamar Jackson's kind of security blanket, his go-to guy, the guy that he leans on like Josh Allen leans on Khalil Shakir, that's Mark Andrews. And they've got to find a way to limit Andrews or take Andrews out of the game. If they're in a base 4-3, maybe that's Milano. If they're in a 4-2-5 nickel look, maybe that's Taron Johnson. But you got to find a way to cover Mark Andrews because that is Lamar's go-to guy in a security blanket. In 17 games this season, Andrews has had 55 receptions on 69 targets, 673 yards. He's only had 4 drops, so he is a very, very capable receiver. And here's the thing, folks. He's had 39 first down plays for this Baltimore Ravens offense. That's second after Zay. That is a guy that Lamar will go to. When he is targeted by Lamar, the quarterback rating is 140.9. So when Lamar throws to Mark Andrews, they are highly successful. He's third in yards on the team. He's second in targets on the team. It's all right there. We worry about Zay. We worry about some of these big-time wide receivers. Who's that guy that the opposing quarterback will go to when things get tough to make a play? And that's Mark Andrews. So they're going to have to find a way to limit him, keep him from getting third down conversions, get our defense off the field. And Lamar, while he's had great regular season success, he has not had great postseason success. get some turnovers, get some things going, get him frustrated. All of a sudden, you got some things. So, Cash Skitch Coochie, nice name. He says Milano can't crash on Henry, keep eyes on Lamar, and cover Andrews over the middle all at once. Got to hope Lamar plays bad. There's 10 other players on the team, my man. That's my point. He's not going to have to do all three of those. And every defensive set is going to have him doing something different. We don't know if he's going to spy Lamar or not. That might be somebody else. We don't know if he's going to cover Andrews all the time. All 7 guys in the middle plus DBs, everybody has to crash on the ball when Derrick Henry rushes it. Good rush defense is gang tackling. Good rush defense is a team effort. So I think you're overstating things a little bit as far as Milano goes. There's other guys on that team as well, and they're all healthy. So I feel good about that. My 5th and final key to this game, like last week against Denver, this offensive line has to have another week like it did last week. I mean, this is the first game against Baltimore. Think about this. This Bills offensive line has given up, I think, 15 sacks if you count the 2 from last week in the playoffs. But in the regular season, 13 sacks. 3 of those sacks were against Baltimore in that first game. So almost, not quite, but almost a third of their sacks given up in the season. You look at it, and they gave them up to Baltimore. So they did not play well against the Ravens. That group has to play well again like they did last week, and I think they will. I think that when you look at this Bills team, I think that right now the group that leads them is that offensive front. It's Brown, it's Torrance, it's McGovern, it's Edwards, and it's Deion Dawkins. And they're going to have to do it again this week. This is a team, like we talked about earlier, a Baltimore team that gives up 80 yards rushing a game. For the Bills to be right offensively, they've got to get into some rushing so they can get to play action and their short passing game to hopefully get things open over the top. So that Bills offensive line, I'll be watching them again from the first play they're on the field. They're going to be highly vital this week. So, again, my 5 keys of the game. Number 1, help the defense against bigger offensive sets in Baltimore, whether that be getting to a base 4-3 or whatever. Maybe do some more 5-man blitzes and things like that. Number 2, Josh Allen and the offense has to play better. They got to have a better game than they did the first game. Third is third down conversions for not only the offense but the defense, or should I say not only for the defense but also the offense, because we know that third down conversion number, that emphasis has been on the defense for quite some time this season. My 4th key is take Andrews out of the game. Try to limit him. That is Lamar's go-to guy in sticky situations. They've got to get him covered up and limit the first down conversions on third down that he has done a really good job of this season. Like we said, 39 of them this season. And then finally, the 5th thing is the O-line has to have another week like they did last week against Denver. Control the line of scrimmage. Get Cook downhill. If we get Ray Davis back, get Davis the ball. You got Johnson. Then you got Josh as well. So you got a lot of running options in the backfield. But that O-line, first things first, they have to take care of business. And finally, we talk about it every week, folks, before we get out of here. Intangibles. All right. And we talked about it earlier. You're playing at home in January in the playoffs. That's got to mean something. That's got to mean something. It's going to be single-digit weather, colder with the wind, no snow, but there'll be snow in the seats, snow on the ground. There'll be wind, just how we like it. And that is a huge intangible that the Bills have to take advantage of. And then again, we talk about special teams and tight games. We got to talk about Bass, making sure he converts all of his extra points and field goals, and then turnovers. We got to turn Lamar over when we can turn him over. So that is the Big O Show here on a Thursday on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network, powered by Believe. Again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate you as always, folks. Thanks for listening. Our numbers are going up real quick before we get out of here. John DeFazio with the super chat. He says, my analysis, number one, third game of the year / offense typically takes longer to establish chemistry. 2, Cooper is a cover one beater. 3, more diverse run game. 3, lost slot during the game. 4, Coleman was raw. I appreciate all those things, John. I think that was very well said. This is as Terrell Bernard said this week, folks, and I will say it for him. As he said to the team, no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man, and this is not the same Buffalo Bills. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening when you get to the podcast. If you didn't have a chance to watch us live on YouTube, and we'll be back Sunday night as soon as that game's over with our post-game show, and then we'll have John on Monday, on the beat on Tuesday. I think we're going to have Sal Moriana and also Adam Benini come on with us, our partners over on Believe, to join us on the beat on Tuesday. But as always, folks, we appreciate you very, very much. Thanks for all your love and support. And as always, much love. Go Bills.
I'm still the same damn kid from Oklahoma. Same old dreams